Welcome to the Thrive in Design podcast, the show for interior product brands ready to turn insight into action. I'm your host, Nicole Lashae Hall, founder of Thrive in Design. Each week, we explore how manufacturers, marketers, and sales leaders can align strategy, storytelling, and systems to drive real specification growth. This podcast is about moving beyond scattered marketing, outdated sales tactics, and visibility for visibility's sake, and into clarity, alignment, and momentum. Whether you're navigating change, scaling thoughtfully, or rethinking how your brand shows up in the design industry, you're in the right place. In the interior design industry, most products don't fail because they're poorly designed. They fail because they're launched without a real go-to-market strategy. Welcome back for another episode of the Thrive in Design podcast. And I am very excited about today's episode. It's going to be short and sweet, I think. But today I really wanted to focus on really the difference between a product launch and a go-to-market strategy and give you a little bit of a roadmap of what that means for a go-to-market strategy and roadmap. And I want you to leave this conversation today like very clear, very clear. And so what I see in our industry, especially when I go to like HD Expo and BDNY and all the even smaller local trade shows as well, I see so many amazing products all the time, right? And I've shared so many case studies of brands that I've come across in the industry of that were doing it like really well, brands that could have improved on their storytelling. But nonetheless, no matter if the brand is like exceptional with their go-to-market strategy, their launch strategy, or they're just like, trying to improve, I see that interior product brands are exceptional at making products. We have lots of amazing products in here, but they are rarely trained to commercialize them. And I say this from a perspective of somebody who has worked with brands that have done everything from $14 million in sales per year all the way up to $600 million in sales a year. I think more. I've worked for brands that had done the range. But I would say that on the smaller side, and still $14 million is a lot of money, right? Or even brands that are doing maybe $4 million, they know how to create their products. And when I say commercialize them, they don't have the know-how in how to get them to market. So if you're one of those brands, if you're like, hey, I'm in the $4 million to maybe even $20 million mark, and we've had proof of concept by bringing our product to market, people have purchased it, people have specified it, but we've kind of just been like going with the flow in terms of how we go to market. We've researched a couple trade shows, we've researched the top design firms, and we've been lucky. But we've realized that go-to-market is often treated as a promotion for us and not necessarily an infrastructure. And when that happens, the result typically is that beautiful products never reach the full specification potential. And I want everyone to reach their full specification potential and ultimately for people in built environments to enjoy your products. That is the ultimate goal. That is why I do what I do. It's, yes, I want you to get sales. I want you to reach your goals. I want you to have a go-to-market strategy. But ultimately, I want the built environment to be better, to be filled with products that people enjoy, that are durable, that even create and curate spaces that have lasting memories, no matter if that's hospitality, residential, or any segment in between. So let's talk about launch strategy and go-to-market strategy. So many brands confuse launch visibility with sales readiness, and internal teams assume reps will pick it up naturally. This happens all the time. Leadership underestimates how much clarity designers actually need in order to specify. So what I see that traditionally happens, and we talked about this a little bit in episode 3, is that because the departments are working in silos, product development is working on their product, passes it on to marketing to create the story and the sales tools, and then passes it on to the sales team in order to go out and sell. What happens in that process is that a lot of assumptions are made, especially on the handoff between marketing and sales. Marketing, in addition to leadership, underestimates and assumes that the sales team, hey, they got this. Maybe they have experience selling. Let's just give them the tools that they need and let them go sell. But what they're not thinking about is the end result. The end result is a designer's experience and the specification process. So if you're over assuming that your sales team have what they need and know how to tell a brand story and translate the brand story from your sales team to the specifier in a myriad of ways, because each specifier probably needs something different, each segment needs something different, then you're leaving a lot of room for error. And you're also leaving a lot of room for designers to just overlook your sales reps and the inconsistent story that might be being told about your product launches. So what does the data say about that? Because I am a person that goes to the data for everything. We at Darwin Design are not a market research company, but we do reference a lot of market research in what we're doing. Because I never want to be the company that's like, hey, I just made up this thing off the top of my head. Now apply it to your business. No, I want to show you that the research out there, no matter if it's in our industry or an industry that is in alignment. So like, for example, B2B sales, that it's relevant to how you should be approaching your go-to-market strategy. That being said, let's look at the data. First of all, Harvard Business Review consistently reports that most new products fail due to go-to-market strategy breakdowns, not product quality. McKinsey research also shows that go-to-market alignment can increase revenue performance by double digits. And in B2B environments, buyers complete 60 to 70% of decision-making before talking to sales. And this just goes in alignment with what we were talking about in episode 3, right? There's so many things that need to happen before the sales rep actually interacts with the designer. So if those things are not aligned, you're missing out on maybe 60 to 70% of business. Ultimately, I want you to know that great design is only half the job. Great design of your product, halfway there. The other half is how the market experiences it. When you really think about go-to-market strategy, you can really think about it as an experience for a designer. How will the designer experience your product with or without the sales rep in the picture, right? Of course, your sales rep is going to be in the picture no matter what. But if they're out on another sales call, or if they're busy, or the designer is in their office or at home Googling or on Instagram or TikTok or something, stumbling across information about your products, how will it tell a story without a person, or even with that person once they are able to schedule that meeting? So let's go into why most product launches stall after reveal. So at the beginning of this episode, I talked about there's a difference between product launch and go-to-market strategy. And of course, that might be obvious to some, but for some, it is not. So when you think of a product launch, think of for your company, you might launch, let's say, 2 collections a year. And let's say you are a textile company, for an example. You come up with 2 collections a year. Maybe you have 3 patterns within those collections with 12 different color variations for each of the patterns. You have amazing brand stories and collection stories that go along with each of them. Now, when it comes to a product launch, a launch is a moment and a go-to-market strategy is a system. So let's build off of this example that we're going into right now. When pressure is high, the wrong decision is expensive. That's why the AI and Design Summit exists, to cut through the noise and give architecture and interior product brands practical, strategic guidance on how AI can actually support marketing, sales, product development, and leadership. No hype, no trends for trend's sake, just clarity. And when you're ready to apply that understanding to your own brand, Spec Ready helps you assess what's missing and what to fix first so you become easier to specify. Find clarity at tidsummit.com and direction at specready.co. Launches you lose momentum because energy peaks at reveal and then drops sharply. And then there's no internal roadmap for the 30 to 180 days post-launch. And the success metrics are very unclear or vanity-based. Interior design industry-specific breakdown looks like trade show rewards. Designers are exposed to hundreds of products at that trade show, and then there's no follow-up structure. So let's take a step back into if you're launching like those 2 collections a year, 3 patterns, 12 different color variations, what is the difference between launching that product and actually having a go-to-market strategy? So a launch would look like preparing for the moment that it is revealed to the market. So that might be a buildup of telling the story on social media. That might be a moment at a trade show, for example, NeoCon or HD, where you are revealing the product collection in an experience that people are able to see it. And we've talked about this on previous episodes. And so think of it as all of the activities that lead up to this moment in time that designers are able to see the reveal of your 3 patterns, 12 different color variations 2 times a year. And maybe you do a launch at HD, maybe you do a launch at BDNY. And that is wonderful. I do not want you to shy away from that. I actually encourage it. You should have a launch moment for your collections. The go-to-market strategy is a system. So think about what happens after. We don't want it to be at this moment and then everything drops sharply after that. There's no specifications, there's no orders or anything. After that, you also want to have an internal roadmap for what happens post-launch, 30 to 180 days after the launch. And then what success metrics will we have in place in order to measure the success of this launch? And then we can go down different silos because some launches are really for like buzz for the industry. That launch might not be a top specifier. It might be something that is just creating buzz and awareness for your brand. Some launches of products might be those top specifiers for you, the basics that people are going to use over and over again. But nonetheless, in both scenarios, you want to think about, okay, what are we doing leading up to this launch moment? And then what is our go-to-market strategy in a systematic process that thinks about what's happening 30 to 180 days post-launch that will lead to success for us. And success is up to you to measure and for you to set those metrics. So what does behavioral data say that you can actually reference? Gartner research shows B2B buyers can often decide before sales engagement. And this means influence happens before rep meetings. And if we've said this in this episode, we said it in episode 3. So in terms of that research, in terms of behavioral data, if the buyer is deciding before your launch moment or before the rep meeting, what can you do that is strategic within your launch strategy to get to that moment and inclusive in your go-to-market strategy system? So let's dive deeper into what that might look like into the bigger picture. What I'm about to break down is actually a sequence, but it's not a menu of things that you need to pick and choose from. And skipping the steps actually creates friction later in sales. So when you would think about this go-to-market strategy and not just the launch moment, of course, you need the launch moment. But when you think about the expanded go-to-market phases at a higher level, think about it in these 5 steps in the sequence. The first is market and buyer clarity. So that's deciding where you win first. The second is positioning and story. So giving the product meaning. The third is sales enablement, making it easy to sell. The fourth is momentum channels. So building belief before demand in specific channels. And the fifth is conversion and specification. So how will you turn all of the interest into specifications or contracts or sales? So if you think about your go-to-market strategy specifically for interior product sales in those sequence, and again, it's not a menu that you should just select from. Think about it in those sequence, you will have a full roadmap to guide you pre-launch, during your launch, post-launch for a full go-to-market roadmap. And this order matters because promotion without clarity creates confusion. Sales without story creates price pressure, and momentum without enablement burns reps out. And we don't want that. B2B studies show companies with a defined go-to-market system outperform reactive competitors. So the last thing that we want is for you to be reactive. It's for you to be like, okay, we launched at this trade show, or we launched online, and then you're like reacting to what's happening after that. Rather, have a go-to-market success and go-to-market roadmap so that you can have a sequence that you know will be repeatable and that you know will work. So in order to go from the concept of your product, in order to market clarity, I want you to start by answering a couple of questions. Who is this product really for? What project type does it win first? And why should a designer take a risk on it? From there, I want you to start reframing your story for the skeptics, because the story and the brand story isn't just about branding fluff. This is sales infrastructure. A strong positioning will make your product memorable, create internal alignment, and give your reps confidence. It'll also align with what we've been talking about before. The designers don't sell your products to clients, they justify it. So once you resonate with them, once your positioning is strong and your brand story is strong, everything else will be approved faster so that designers are able to strongly explain the why. Now, when it comes to sales enablement, the hard truth is that sales enablement is often an afterthought. You're thinking about your product, you're thinking about your launch strategy, but reps are just handed a PDF and no direction. And I say this from experience, from working for companies that done $14 million in sales all the way up to $600 million of sales. I have never seen direction really given in a full capacity. So there's so much potential out there. What enablement needs to include is clear talk tracks by audience types, priority product applications, objection handling language, so that your reps are not confused, so that the market will then be confused. Your reps need to be clear so that then the market is clear. And then the designers are able to justify specifying your product. Now, when it comes to that fourth step, building momentum before the first order, building momentum is built through belief, not pressure. So what does that look like? Designers referencing the product should be unprompted. Reps should feel confident opening conversations, and there should be early inbound interest. Edelman B2B Trust Barometer shows buyers engage earlier with brands that educate. So make sure that education is a part of that process, is a part of that 5-step roadmap that we talked about. And then lastly, in that 5th step, going from interest to contract or interest to specification, the first order matters strategically because they validate your positioning, they shape your internal confidence, and they influence rep behavior. So the things that are improved here are clear spec pathways, consistent follow-up language, and aligned sales and marketing handoffs. So I hope that you walked away today with like, okay, we have a launch strategy, but now we have the clear 5 steps of what we need to do in order to create a go-to-market strategy for our products and for our product launches. You also understand that the hidden cost behind that is skipping the strategy overall, because that will lead to rep disengagement, designer confusion, which we don't want, right? Because they're making their short list and making it fast. So we don't want them to be confused. It might lead to you wasting your budget and missed opportunities in the long term. So in order for you to reframe that, again, strategy. And that strategy does not slow you down. It prevents the rework. And the fastest growing brands aren't improvising, they're executing a plan. So as a final thought, your go-to-market strategy, again, is not just a launch activity. It's a leadership decision. And as you walk away from this episode today, I encourage you to think about 3 questions. Where does your current go-to-market strategy process break? Are your reps enabled or are they guessing? And are you building demand or are you hoping for it? So if this episode gave you clarity, imagine what a full roadmap would change. So I hope to continue this discussion. And again, my contact information is in the show notes below. So feel free to drop me a line and let's keep this conversation going. If today's episode sparked ideas, the next step is giving those ideas structure. Spec Ready is Thrive in Design's strategic framework designed to help interior product brands show up clearly, align marketing and sales, and become easier to specify without adding more noise or complexity. You can learn more at specready.co. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, be sure to follow the podcast and check out the show notes for links, resources, and ways to get in touch with our team. Thanks for listening to the Thrive in Design podcast. I'll see you next time.